Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mission Control, a podcast focusing on executive directors and nonprofit leaders and how they strive to make positive impacts in their community. As always, I'm Paul Schmidt, the owner of UnoDeuce Multimedia, and I am here with a good friend of mine, Casey Cooper of the Tri-County Office on Aging. Hey, Casey, how are you doing?
Hey, Paul, I'm doing really well. I thank you so much, first of all, for having me on today. This is such a cool opportunity. I'm glad to be here. I'm doing well, and I hope you are too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you were able to make it and to be on the program. And before we start, though, you've changed titles recently. What is your new title, though?
Yeah. I'm the assistant director now at TCOA as
right.
of about a year ago.
About a year ago, yes. And I didn't want to throw in you as executive director. I didn't want to mess that up.
Yeah.
I know.
No, not there.
No, you're good. You're good. And so how we typically start this show is because the name of the show is Mission Control. Let's start there. What is the mission of Tri-County Office on Aging?
Yes. So our mission at TCOA is to promote and preserve the independence and dignity of the aging population. So in so many words, everything that we do at TCOA is to help older adults and caregivers and adults with disabilities get connected to programs and services that can help them age in their own homes and communities or wherever they call home in a safe way. So we connect people to things like Meals on Wheels that we administer, in-home care, respite care, anything that helps a person feel safe at home, be able to stay at home as they get older. We know that most people want that as they age rather than to go into institutional care, although it is a choice. And so that's really what we do.
That's amazing. And so as a young person like yourself, how did you manage to get to this spot with TCOA? How did you manage to end up at TCOA?
Well, thank you for that. It was really kind of, it's my first job out of college. I tell everyone that, and I'm still here. So hopefully that says something positive about the agency. But I, got my master's in social work degree and at U of M, and I was just applying all over the state. I didn't have a set thing that I wanted to do other than I knew I wanted to be involved in like an administrative and like a fundraising type of role, work at a nonprofit for sure. And so, I ended up finding this position called fundraising and volunteer specialist at TCOA, and it checked all my boxes. And I interviewed before I graduated and found out I got the job and was just absolutely thrilled. Moved to Lansing, had never really been to Lansing, but, one or two times as a kid. And so that was in 2016. And here I am today, still here. And then you kind of get sucked in. I didn't necessarily set out with a passion to serve older adults, but now I'm like, it's needed. And this is where I'm going to stay. So.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. Where are you from originally?
Greenville, Michigan.
Greenville.
So just outside of Grand Rapids.
Okay. Yeah. So it's really like Lansing's like kind of like a midpoint from where you went to college.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've I've found Lansing to be my home. I do live in Eaton Rapids, but Lansing is, where I go and where we do things, and it's home. So, yeah.
Now you mentioned that when you were on the cusp of graduating and you were looking for a position to land at, you mentioned that nonprofits were high on your list of places to be. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, I think, I knew that I wanted to go into a helping profession. I knew that social work was a broad field. You could do, hospital work or local nonprofit, but I had a really positive internship experience doing fundraising work and event planning work, for a nonprofit that supported folks going through a cancer diagnosis. And so that really, led me to thinking this could be done. This is done everywhere. This is a really broad field to be able to fundraise. Every nonprofit's going to have a component of that. And, I feel good when I go home at the end of the day that I feel like I made an impact. Even if it's more on the admin side or behind the scenes, I feel good about what I did and what I do. And so I just can't see myself in a different setting.
And so you mentioned that you really were looking for, how did you put it? You just said it. You're like a helping position, a
Helping
help. What?
profession.
Yeah, helping profession. Where does that come from?
Um, that's a good question. I think, it's kind of an interesting thing in social work. You're like, you're going into social work maybe because you needed social work at some point, and I think just, the way I grew up, we needed to take advantage of services for folks who were living in poverty or for folks who needed assistance. And, that changed my life, having access to those things and gave me opportunities. And I want that for other people. I want people to be able to live a good life, a life that they want. And we're person-centered at TCOA. And so that also is what drew me into working here.
And you've been at TCOA for quite some time.
About
And
8.5 years.
yeah, yeah, I think that's about when I met you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Time it gets a little hazy pre-COVID.
Oh, I know. There's a before and after times.
Exactly. So what are, I mean, staying in this position, well, not just staying in the position, but just staying with this organization allows you to have continuity with the people and the services. But what is it about maybe those things that really keeps you at TCOA?
Yeah. Well, I think, I didn't even know what an area agency on aging was before I came to TCOA. I think many people don't. And once you get there and you start to realize that this is a huge, huge issue, aging. And I don't mean issue in a negative way, but I mean, people aren't necessarily prepared, for what's going to happen when you get older. Planning, pre-planning, things like that. And so you just realize, and I saw this with my own parents, and many people do in their personal lives, that until you need an area agency on aging, until you need a place like TCOA, you don't know we exist. And I wanted that to change. I want people to know who we are and what we do before they need us, so that they can plan and they can be prepared. And so I think it just really made sense to me to go to a place where there's this huge, social thing happening, aging. Everybody wants to get old, right? That's the goal, but you need support to get there. Most people do. So, and I've delivered the Meals on Wheels because that's one of our programs. And you get to see the people that you're delivering these meals to and interact with them. And in some cases, you are the only person they see each day. And that is just, super impactful. Isolation is a horrifying thing for anybody, especially older adults. And you want to combat that as much as you can so people can live well and age well. So
Well,
that's why I'm here.
oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to
Oh,
interrupt.
that's good.
But so tell me, at your office, I mean, I know that there's different offices on aging around the state. At your particular office, what are the areas in which you are known for, or what are the services that you really are the ones that are the front line in the community for?
Yeah, we are. So we are a network. We're one of 16 area agencies on aging in the state, one of over, I think, 600 in the country. So every county or subset of counties is covered in some way by AAA. And so they're all a little bit different, but we also are similar in a lot of ways. But in our particular region where we serve, Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham counties, I already mentioned Meals on Wheels a couple of times. That also includes congregate dining sites where folks can gather if they are able to leave their home. They can come have a meal at a community center or a house of worship. We have several different ones in the area. We also want to make sure that we are providing health and wellness workshops. So we have a registered dietitian who is very good about promoting these for folks who have diabetes, chronic pain, trouble with falls. We have kinship support for grandparents raising grandchildren, some things that we can do there. Respite for caregivers, classes and education for family caregivers. And our project choices are in-home services and the different things that we do to get people connected to personal care, taking a bath, home care, toileting, anything that you would need as you get older that you need some assistance with. So those are we have a variety of programs, and sometimes it changes if we get grants. Excuse me. But overall, those are just a few of the ones that we do, getting people anything that they need to stay in their homes and communities and be safe and independent.
When you first arrived there, did you have that many programs, or were there like some
Um,
add-ons, or
yeah, it's evolved for sure. We had, a similar sort of, we've always, since I've been here, had Meals on Wheels,
Mhm.
Project Choices, health and wellness, things like that. But some of the ways that we've done delivery have expanded. And so now we have carry-out meals as an option for folks within the Meals on Wheels program. And so changes within programs all the time, depending on funding and what more you can get, and things like that. So yeah, there's been evolution. Mhm.
What are the biggest misconceptions that you've seen over the years that you've been there with the population that you serve?
Great question. A lot of misconceptions, I think, overall in aging, and really just getting at your life's not over. You're not reaching the end. You don't have to think about it that way. You can still be involved in the community. You just might need some support to do that. But I think that there's this idea that you're going to have to go into a nursing home, or you're going to have to go into some kind of institutional care because that's just what people do. But then you find out, well, that's not covered by the insurance that I have, or that's just not something that I can afford at all. And so I think just trying to change the perception of, there's this less expensive option for Medicaid, and, people can age at home. And, there's another piece of that too, where folks think that we only serve low income. There is no income requirement for example, the nutrition program, Meals on Wheels. Some of them there are, because that's tied to Medicaid and federal dollars and things like that. But nobody should ever think, I'm not a senior, I'm not going to call TCOA. Anybody can call TCOA and get some information, whether you want to hear about, options as your parents get older, and you're advocating for them, or you want to know, where can I go? What senior centers are in the area? Things like that. So don't hesitate to call us if you don't think you're a senior. I hear that all the time. I'm not old enough to use you guys. Well, we're all aging, right? We all hope to be an older adult. So don't discount the valuable information that you can get from your area agency on aging, no matter what age you are. It's the biggest one, I think.
No, I think that's really key though, because the simple fact that uh, I know that I'd be one of those folks that would have been like, oh, I don't quite fit the criteria, when in
Mm-hmm.
fact the criteria is a little bit more malleable than you anticipate.
Right.
So, but what were some of the, when you got into the role, or when you first came to TCOA, if you can remember back that, because it probably
Yeah.
feels like it's been forever. But what were some of the initial obstacles that you had to overcome
Hmm.
coming into your role there?
Well, I I started in the fundraising area, and I think, relationship building is what fundraising is, right? And so just, I like I said, I'd never been to Lansing really except as a child. And so it really takes a lot to build that up. And at the same time, you don't want people to say, oh, I'm going to sponsor that just because I know Casey, or we've interacted. You want them to sponsor because they want to support TCOA. And long after I'm gone, I want you to continue to support TCOA because the mission really means something to you. And so trying to, build those relationships, but make it about the agency at the same time is always, it's an ongoing challenge, but a really important one. And not just even from a fundraising perspective, but from do you know who we are so that you can use our services? Do you know that TCOA stands for Tri-County Office on Aging? Just, making sure that the information is in the community, and at the same time, accurate information, because it changes frequently, right? A lot of, news is constant these days. And so keeping up with that type of stuff was a challenge and is a challenge. Got easier as I went on, but it's always going to be a factor, trying to make sure that people know who we are.
Well, absolutely. So what kind of tactics did you develop to make sure that you're building this relationship, potentially a friendship as well,
Mhm.
but uh, but also making sure that the mission is first, not your
Yeah.
personal Rolodex, but the mission's
Yeah.
first. What are some of the tactics that you did in trying to also integrate yourself into a brand new community
Yeah.
as well? That's probably the big one is like, what did you do? How did you do it?
Yeah. Well, I relied on my network. I was so super lucky to have a very supportive team and supervisor and kind of leaned on them. Who do you know? Who can I talk to? What can I do on the weekends? Where can I go? And so that took time and I just kind of did it. But I think, now that I've been doing that for a while, I want to be that person and I want to be able to bring people in. And, there's so many ways you can be involved in TCOA. And so I was also doing a lot of the volunteer recruitment tasks and just bringing people in. So maybe you sponsored and you had a great experience. But there's so much more you can do. There's time, talent, and treasure. So maybe you can't sponsor this year. Maybe you can't do this or that. But could you volunteer? Could you do a Meals on Wheels route? Could you teach one of our health and wellness classes? Do you want to join our advisory council? Just things that bring people in, because then they can take that information to their communities as well and make sure there's a continuity there.
So tell me one of your favorite fundraising stories, like a really
Oh,
cool, a really cool one that that really sticks with you always.
wow. Well, I'm thinking that's a really good question. One that's kind of coming to mind is just, we have a gentleman who would join our golf outing every single year. And he founded the golf outing. And I had no idea about this until, I was several years into this. And he was just, he's the friendliest man and he truly understands why we golf. Sometimes you come to a golf outing and it's, I'm here to golf. We want you to know who we are. But he really got it. And I think, he stayed in touch with us, um, throughout the years. And I think that just knowing that that was like something that started in the community and not even within our agency is really powerful. Because this was somebody who just decided there's a need here and we can do this. I can make this happen. So I'm going to get with this agency and we're going to make it happen. And so it was very organic, I think. And, this is way before my time, but you kind of hear these stories and like, that's awesome. Somebody felt so passionate that they wanted to create this fundraiser and then it continued and does continue today. So just champions for independence, we call them at TCOA, our
That's really
supporters.
cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, I'm not going to dwell on the pandemic too much because we all know how that went, but let's look at some of the things that came out of that you thought, well, okay, this is a
Mm,
positive thing for our organization. Let's keep this
mhm.
going. What are some things that were implemented in a positive way coming out of that pandemic?
Well, I think, one thing that we saw is a connection to technology. That kind of goes back to your other question is, there's a stereotype that older adults aren't using technology or don't know how or don't want to. And that's just simply not true. Many do and want to learn more. And so we definitely saw an increase in folks who wanted to be connected to somebody to just talk on the phone, to be able to have a text kind of relationship with or video chat. And so we're actually involved in a program with the MSU School of Social Work right now to do some tech training, virtual connections, it's called, for older adults, connecting them
Mm.
to a coach volunteer who goes through a manual of different ways to use technology. And it's very, very cool when someone who's 90 years old just learned how to take a selfie and is super proud of it and wants to, send it to their family. And so I think that was one thing that I just kind of stands out is this use and desire to use your smartphones and your computers to stay connected. We, saw a lot of volunteers, choose not to come back after the pandemic for fear of their own, health and safety. And I understand that. And, things kind of opened back up, but not everybody wanted to emerge at the same pace. And so technology is a way that you could stay connected. The challenge is getting people devices, right? So that's ongoing always, but to have the skills, we could help there potentially.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's a huge misconception. I've always
Yeah.
said the same thing is like, we all have access to technology and
Mhm.
everybody has a different way of they approach it. And,
Mhm.
we can all learn. And I think that's really wise on your end to continue to implement things that people need. Um, well, I know that we just talked about at the beginning of the session that you are now in a new role. How did that all come about? I mean, it's probably pretty organic, seeing as you've been there for just over 8 years. But talk
Yeah.
about your new role. What is it all about?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm excited about it. I had done the fundraising for so many years and I loved it and I'll always have a piece of that with me, but I always kind of knew I wanted to do more administration type of things. And so I supervise a group of 7 folks who are, fantastic, and just make the agency what it is, along with everybody else who works at TCOA. But now I've really moved into community engagement in a broader sense. Most of the folks that I'm working with in some way interact with the community or provide services to the community. And so it's really, if I had to, give one phrase to describe what I do now, I think it'd be community engagement, which is, like I said, very broad, but you're working with a team and I work with just an amazing team. And that's what really, keeps me going too. So,
So with the community engagement piece, what is your, I know we also talked about this before we started recording, but what is your like day to day really looks like now?
yeah, it's different every day, but that also keeps it exciting. And so, we are at, and if I'm not there myself, someone else is often there, but we're trying to be at all the health fairs and the resource fairs. And I, work with our advisory council very closely, which is comprised of older adults and service providers in the 3 counties. And that group has really wanted to engage more with outreach. And so outreach is a huge piece of what we do and what we want to do. And so, just trying to get folks engaged and, outside of just in this agency, people who come to us as volunteers, how can you help spread the word about TCOA? So it's a lot of, the day to day, like I said, it varies so much, lots of meetings and lots of, chats, one-on-ones with my folks that I work with. But, that, and then of course, advocacy kind of came in as well. Once you are in this role, you naturally have some advocacy to do. And that's, at the local level and state and national, we're a network, thankfully, in the aging community. But that was a new piece for me to get into.
Well, talk about that. How do you feel about that end? I mean, because like you mentioned, like I said before we started recording, that you just came back from Washington D.C. I
Yeah.
know that you have to do it on the local, state, now federal level. Talk to me about your experience with that thus far.
Yeah, that has been a big learning curve for me. And I think we were super fortunate, our director and our planning and program development manager and myself, to go to DC for the US Aging Policy briefing. And so we kind of learned the latest. And then as part of that, you head to Capitol Hill and you go talk to lawmakers and you tell them, these are the important things that older adults need. Are you going to be able to get this passed? This legislation is really great, or this is not so great. And, things that you just need to be able to have that quick conversation and have those talking points. And I have a lot of buildup to go here too. I have a lot to learn, but we thankfully are a network. And I lean into that word a lot because we truly are connected, to this US aging at the federal, national level, our state office on aging, and of course, all of the local, townships and counties who are supporting and supportive as well. So it's just, again, relationship building. That's such a theme with everything that you do, but trying to stay engaged with, advocates and lawmakers is really critical when you're funded through so many different sources.
Hmm. It makes a whole lot of sense. So,
Mhm.
in this new role, which you said, I believe you've been in it for about a year,
Mhm.
what are some areas that you're looking to either expand, improve touch on, or even maybe even create?
Well, I'm gonna go macro level with this one. I think aging, does not get the credit it deserves. I don't think it gets the recognition it needs. And I'm in no way knocking any other population here, but I just don't see seniors being elevated and talked about as much. There are certain organizations people can immediately associate with children or with other folks, but with seniors, it's Meals on Wheels, but there's so much more out there than nutrition too. And I would love to have the conversation change and have seniors elevated in all kinds of topics. When you're serving seniors, you're not focused on one particular area, health or anything. It's just broadly seniors. And I think that large focus can make it hard sometimes to have a targeted ask or a targeted approach. But at the same time, this is, again, something that's coming for us all, or is coming for us all. And so I want to see the conversation around older adult services not be something that people dread or that they don't want to have to think about, but something that is just naturally a part of life. This is a culture change that I'm talking about. So how do we get there? We just keep talking. We just keep talking about what we do and who we are. We got to make sure that people know what TCOA is and what an area agency on aging is, and that they'll use us.
And over the past 8 years that you've been at TCOA, how have you personally evolved?
That's a good question. I think I have, some more empathy for this population. I recognize I'm a younger person serving a population that is an older population, and have gotten some of the questions about that, but it's not that for me. It's just, these are people. They're people who need help. They're people who need services, and so we're going to meet that need. And I think I have a little more empathy after working with people who are older. My parents had passed, but before they did, I had to use some of my knowledge from TCOA that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so it really impacts, your whole life when you start to learn about these things. Now I really feel proud that, hopefully I'm somebody that folks can think, my dad is getting older. I need to talk to somebody. And if I can't, it wouldn't be my role to necessarily directly help you, but I can get you connected to TCOA. I want people to, think of us as a resource. And if they know me, we'll get you connected, or if they know whoever. So I think have gotten better at, bringing people in, maybe.
That's awesome. How do you, now I know you mentioned that not every day is the same. You're always doing something, in that Thursdays are your longest days, but what do you do to decompress? What is Casey outside of TCOA? Who is this person? What do you do?
I take baths. That's my number one relax.
Nice.
I love to be outside. I mean, you can see right now behind me, beautiful sunshine coming through the window. And so that's my decompression. I go outside in my garden. When it's winter, I plan my garden. I have an entire database. So I really try to be outside, and you do have to shut it off no matter what you do. You have to find a way to do that. No matter how much the work serves you, you have to be able to have those boundaries and shut it off. So I really try to do that. We learn about that in school, and man, it's true. So I shut the phone off, I shut the computer off, and I go outside.
That's brilliant. And if anybody wants to learn more about you or TCOA, what's the best way to reach you?
Visit us, go to tcoa.org or call us. We're at 517-887-1440, and we're on social media. So check out our pages.
Awesome. Well, thank you for for this wonderful conversation, Casey. I could have been talking to you for hours, but this was great. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Paul. Same. You put me at ease right away. I didn't know what to expect, and I had a great time. Great conversations. Thank you.
Awesome. No, that's my pleasure, because this has been great. So, and thank you all again for listening to this program. And don't miss the next episode. It's coming out in a couple weeks. If there's someone that you know of that you would like to hear about their journey in the nonprofit world, please email us at missioncontrol@UnoDeuce.com. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe on YouTube or your favorite platform and give us a review. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time in the Control Center.